In today's video, a quiet airfield in rural Northamptonshire became the centre of a major criminal investigation. Two men operating largely under the radar were drawn into a case that would expose the hidden use of aviation, organised crime and law enforcement. What unfolded over the following months would reveal more than just individual wrongdoing. It would uncover a criminal operation with far-reaching implications. This is Curios&Spiritual. No deep dives, we're going to infinity and beyond with this, as we take a look at the police investigation and trial. In the final quarter of 2021, the National Crime Agency, the NCA, began tracking irregular flights and clandestine activities at private airstrips across the Midlands. One site under scrutiny was Deanerthorpe Airfield, a former military base near Corby, Northamptonshire. What drew attention was a noticeable pattern: light aircraft arriving at night and leaving shortly after, unconnected to the registered private owners. Intelligence indicators suggested these flights could form part of a larger organised crime operation, using remote airfields to deliver high-value Class A product into the UK. By early 2022, surveillance teams had identified two primary figures of interest: Richard David Farmer, aged 39 years old, and his associate, Blaine Benjamin Harvey, also 39 years old, both from Coventry. Farmer came up on police radar due to the frequent journeys between Coventry and the areas near the illicit airstrips. Phone data and travel logs linked him indirectly to a network suspected of importing Class A product. Between February the 1st and the 22nd, covert surveillance intensified. Agents monitored Farmer's mobile signal, tracked to Deanerthorpe. Investigators noted a consistent pattern: Farmer leaving Coventry several times, driving around 4 hours northeast, suspicious in the context of recent National Crime Agency leads. The investigation took shape when the NCA secured targeted intelligence, pinpointing a planned coat drop on the 23rd of February 2022 at Deanerthorpe. The evidence of coordinated activity, including Farmer's travel plan and Harvey's involvement, the agency mobilised an intelligence-led strike operation. Teams assembled ahead of the event, positioning surveillance units around the airfield, while specialist arrest teams took defensive positions nearby. On the 23rd of February, as dusk settled, the operation went live. A light aircraft landed quietly on one of Deanerthorpe's runways. Soon after, Richard Farmer drove onto the airstrip in a civilian vehicle. Surveillance confirmed he approached the aircraft. Around the same time, Blaine Harvey appeared in the vicinity. A black wheeled suitcase was brought from the plane and placed into Farmer's car at the edge of the runway. When Richard Farmer exited the airfield, the car was stopped by officers from Northamptonshire Police, and 50 brown tape packages were found within the suitcase. The arrest was swift. Both men were detained without incident. Following the arrest, National Crime Agency teams conducted an immediate on-site search of the aircraft. The uncovering of 50 kilograms of Class A packaged in travel suitcase in the car, the street value was estimated at £4 million. That suitcase was seized intact before it could enter domestic distribution. Authorities also examined Farmer's vehicle and seized his phone for immediate forensic response. Investigators reported that Farmer's phone contained messages linking him directly to Blaine Harvey, with references to collection and timing that matched the flight records. Investigators cited Harvey, his communications and presence as evidence of conspiracy to supply Class A, and both men were subsequently charged. This interception was hailed by the National Crime Agency a strategic victory. In public statements, officials emphasised their success in dismantling a network that exploited minimal regulations at small airstrips, recognising the increasing trend of light aviation smuggling. The agency called for tighter oversight of such airfields and better intelligence sharing between agencies to prevent similar operations. In Coventry, the arrest sent shockwaves through the local criminal circles. Farmer and Harvey had not previously been high-profile figures. They operated quietly beneath the radar of Metropolitan Policing. However, the scale of the seizure of £4 million worth of gear, intercepted mid-transfer, exposed the sophistication of their plot and the potential reach in their conspiracy. While the suitcase and its contents were enough to justify the arrest and charges, the NCA's ability to prove intent, combined with phone data and surveillance, made golden the prosecution's case. By the close of the night on the 23rd of February, the National Crime Agency had effectively halted a serious trafficking operation driven by a small airfield aircraft. As legal proceedings commenced, forensic remains and digital communications provided critical support. Agents had seized the product, the phones, the suitcase, and Farmer's vehicle, all forming part of a detailed chain. At the same time, the NCA's public messaging shaped the narrative. Smuggling with light aircraft was no longer a low-risk venture, but a focus now of intense law enforcement. The morning after the arrests of Richard Farmer and Blaine Harvey on the 23rd of February 2022, the National Crime Agency transitioned quickly from a successful field operation into a detailed, months-long criminal investigation. With both suspects in custody and £4 million worth of high-purity Class A secured, the agency focused on strengthening its legal case. Farmer and Harvey were initially held in Northamptonshire for questioning under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984. During the initial interviews, neither man offered a full admission. Farmer maintained he was at the airfield for reasons unrelated to Class A. Harvey, for his part, denied involvement. Both exercised their right to remain silent on certain questions, a legal strategy often used in serious criminal cases. Their evasive answers, however, it weighed against the physical and digital evidence gathered at the time of the arrest. The Class A itself, weighing nearly 50 kilograms, was sent for analysis. Forensic labs confirmed its high purity, consistent with bulk importations designed for nationwide distribution. It had been packaged professionally into tightly wrapped bricks, each stamped with a logo indicating the source cartel. The specific criminal group responsible for shipping remained undisclosed during the proceedings. The National Crime Agency and Crown Prosecution Service, the CPS, began working closely to build a timeline and charge sheet based on the evidence. Key among this was the phone data retrieved from both men. Farmer's device contained several encrypted messages, some of which had been deleted prior to arrest. However, through digital recovery tools, investigators retrieved several critical exchanges. These messages included coded language, referencing collections, airfield runs, and the movement of merchandise. One conversation between Farmer and an unnamed contact days before the drop read, "Final confirmation for the 23rd. No mistakes this time." Harvey's communication shows similar patterns, with analysts uncovering GPS location histories that placed him near Dinathorpe on at least 3 separate occasions in the weeks leading up to the arrest. His phone also revealed a call log of repeated contact with Farmer in the 48 hours prior to the aircraft landing. Additionally, metadata confirmed that Harvey's vehicle had travelled on multiple occasions to isolated rural areas, consistent with small airstrips and distribution hubs. Meanwhile, financial investigators were tasked with tracing the income, expenditures, and any unusual financial activity linked to the suspects. Farmer, who did not appear to have legitimate employment at the time, was found to have made several large cash deposits in the months leading up to the arrest. He'd also paid off a car loan with a lump sum, inconsistent with any declared earnings. Harvey's financial records reflected similar discrepancies. These findings added weight to the theory that both men were financially motivated participants in a structured trafficking operation. Back at Dinathorpe, investigators reviewed CCTV footage from the airfield. Although coverage was limited, small critical shots showed the light aircraft arriving at dusk and Farmer's car entering the restricted area shortly after. This footage, combined with officer body cam recordings and audio logs from the arrest, provided a clear sequence of events. Forensic swabs of the suitcase and its contents later revealed partial fingerprints that matched Farmer's. No prints from Harvey were found on the case, though prosecutors maintained his role was organisational rather than hands-on. On the 25th of February, both men were formally charged with conspiracy to import and supply Class A, contrary to Section 1 of the Criminal Law Act 1977 and the Misuse Act 1971. They appeared at Northampton Magistrates Court through video link for a brief hearing. The court declined bail for both, citing the seriousness of the offence, the strength of the evidence and the flight risk posed. Both were remanded in custody pending committal to the Crown Court. In the weeks that followed, further lines of inquiry explored whether the light aircraft had been used in previous smuggling operations. The pilot, whose identity was not made public, was reportedly cooperating with authorities in a separate investigation. Flight records revealed that the plane made several trips from mainland Europe into England over the previous 6 months. The National Crime Agency continued work with international partners to examine whether the seizure was part of a broader trafficking network. By April 2022, the CPS has served the prosecution evidence bundle to the defence teams. It included witness statements from arresting officers, forensic reports, flight manifests, and decoded message transcripts. The material suggested that Farmer and Harvey had been under intermittent surveillance for months, and that the February arrest was a culmination of an intelligence-led operation involving aerial monitoring, signal triangulation, and human observation. At a pre-trial hearing on May the 22nd at Northampton Crown Court, both men pleaded not guilty. While the presence of Class A was undeniable, the connection between the accused and the consignment was circumstantial. Farmer's legal team suggested he had been misled about what he was collecting. Harvey's counsel stated that his client was not involved in any aspect of the drop and was in the area for unrelated reasons. The judge scheduled the trial for later in the year due to the complexity and the seriousness of the allegations. During this period, both the NCA and the CPS emphasised the national implications of the case. A statement issued by the NCA noted the method of smuggling using private aircraft and remote airstrips was a growing concern and underlined the sophistication of modern trafficking operations. It was also seen as a test case of future surveillance-based operations, with heavy reliance on digital evidence and intervention. The lead up to the trial was see increasing legal manoeuvring, but by the end of the summer 2022, it was clear that evidence against Farmer and Harvey was significant, multi-layered and well documented. The CPS would argue that the arrests at Deenathorpe were not only justified, but the final act in a careful operation designed to cut off a major supply route before it took deeper root in UK distribution channels. By early autumn 2022, preparations for the trial of Richard David Farmer and Blaine Benjamin Harvey had reached their final stage. The case was scheduled to be heard at Northampton Crown Court, with a full jury impanelled due to the severity of the charges and the complexity of the evidence. Both defendants faced counts of conspiracy to supply Class A, with an estimated value of £4 million. The prosecution alleged that Farmer and Harvey had acted as key players in a smuggling operation that relied on private aviation and covert airstrip access to transport high-grade product into the UK. The trial opened with the Crown Prosecution Service outlining its case. The prosecuting counsel presented a timeline of the National Crime Agency investigation, stressing the planned and deliberate nature of the operation. According to the prosecution, Farmer had arrived at Deenathorpe Airfield on the 23rd of February 2022 with full knowledge of the purpose to collect a suitcase containing approximately 50 kilograms of high purity coke, which had just been flown in by a light aircraft from overseas. Harvey, it was alleged, had coordinated key logistics and was on the ground to provide oversight and direction for the pickup and onward distribution. The prosecution introduced evidence in stages, beginning with bodycam footage from the arrest, drone surveillance of the airfield, and CCTV showing the defendants entering the site shortly after the plane's arrival. A police analyst testified about the route taken by Farmer from Coventry to Corby, traced by ANPR systems and mobile phone mass data. Harvey's movements were also reconstructed using GPS location logs extracted from his mobile device. Next, the prosecution turned to the forensic and digital evidence. Expert witness confirmed that the suitcase seized at the scene bore partial fingerprints belonging to Farmer. In addition, police technicians have recovered deleted messages from both suspects, including encrypted texts including coded language such as drop confirmed, merch, and landing at 5. Though the defence argued these messages were vague and open to interpretation, the prosecution insisted they were unmistakably about the consignment. The Financial Investigation Unit presented records showing both men made large unexplained cash deposits in the months preceding the arrest. Farmer had no documented source of income, yet had repaid a car loan and paid rent in lump sums. Harvey's bank account showed minimal activity, yet he was linked to ownership of a vehicle worth over £25,000, allegedly purchased in cash. In addition, a flight path reconstruction revealed that the aircraft used in the operation had made at least 6 prior journeys into rural English airfields from continental Europe over the previous year. Although these earlier flights did not result in seizures, the NCA suggested they were likely part of an ongoing smuggling route. While the pilot was not on trial, the evidence was admissible as context for sophistication of the operation. Throughout the trial, the defence adopted different strategies. Farmer's legal team attempted to argue that it had been used as an unwitting courier. They conceded that he had picked up the suitcase, but claimed he had no idea it contained product. He allegedly believed he was transporting legitimate goods on behalf of a friend who he had not questioned the request. His barrister asked the jury to consider the possibility of manipulation, drawing attention to Farmer's lack of prior convictions and suggesting he may have been out of his depth. Harvey's defence, on the other hand, focused on denying any physical connection to the Class A product. His counsel insisted that Harvey did not touch the suitcase, had not been inside the airfield itself, and that the prosecution's case against him rested on the circumstantial. They argued that Harvey's proximity to the scene and communication with Farmer were insufficient to prove conspiracy, and that he had no direct contact with the Class A or the aircraft. Harvey himself did not take the stand, exercising his right to silence. Despite these defences, the prosecution returned repeatedly to the overlapping body of evidence, messages referring to the coordinated pickups, surveillance footage of joint travel, and the time of the defendant's presence at the airfield. In his summing up, the prosecuting barrister stated, "This was not an accidental meeting or a misunderstanding. It was a coordinated, premeditated collection of Class A shipment with the intention of distributing it across the UK." The jury retired for deliberation, and after 2.5 weeks of hearings, the atmosphere in the courtroom was tense. While both defendants had family present throughout the proceedings, neither showed much emotion as they waited for the outcome. After approximately 8 hours of deliberation, the jury returned unanimous verdicts of guilty on all charges against both men. Following the verdict, sentencing was scheduled for early 2023, pending preparation and pre-sentencing reports. The presiding judge gave an indication that custodial sentences would be inevitable and lengthy, citing the seriousness of the offence. The judge delivered post-verdict remarks. The defendants were knowingly engaged in the trafficking of harmful substances that fuel addiction, crime, and devastation across communities. Their operation displayed elements of planning, coordination, and concealment consistent with high-level Class A supply. The court will deal with these crimes accordingly. The National Crime Agency issued a press release praising the successful conviction, noting it as a warning to attempting to bypass border controls through general aviation. The sentencing of Richard David Farmer and Blaine Harvey was scheduled for early 2023 at Northampton Crown Court, following their unanimous conviction of conspiracy to supply a Class A product. With the trial concluded and both men remanded in custody, the prosecution and defence were given several weeks to submit pre-sentence reports, mitigation statements, and character references. The presiding judge reconvened the courtroom in February 2023 for final sentencing. During the session, the judge reiterated the seriousness of the charges and the overwhelming weight of evidence presented during the trial. He described the operation as coordinated, deliberate, and profit-driven, with both Farmer and Harvey playing active and essential roles. Before delivering judgment, the court heard a brief mitigation from both defence barristers. Farmer's legal counsel described his client as a man without previous convictions, who had become involved in serious crime due to financial desperation and peer pressure. They argued that Farmer had not acted as the organiser of the operation, but rather as a willing subordinate, whose role, though serious, did not involve violence, weapons, or the recruitment of others. He was portrayed as someone who made a catastrophic mistake, but showed remorse for his actions, following conviction. Harvey's defence submitted a limited mitigation, as their client had chosen not to engage with the pre-sentence report process. His barrister emphasised that no direct physical evidence, such as fingerprints or DNA, connected Harvey to the Class A product. They requested the court to acknowledge that his role, while involved, was less hands-on than Farmer's. Nonetheless, the judge was unpersuaded by the arguments, noting that Harvey's digital footprint, communication logs, and financial records clearly demonstrated his knowledge of and participation in the scheme. In the mitigation, the court recognised that neither man had serious prior convictions, that no firearms or violence had been used. Nevertheless, the aggravating factors heavily outweighed any mitigating circumstances. The court sentenced Richard David Farmer to 12 years and Blaine Harvey to 12 years and 6 months in prison, amounting to a combined sentence of 24 years and 6 months. The judge ordered that the time already spent in custody since their February 2022 arrest would count towards their total terms. Both men were also made subject to serious crime prevention orders, which will come into effect upon release and restrict their ability to use mobile phones, internet services, and financial accounts without notification to authorities. The NCA also confirmed that the financial investigations under the Proceeds of Crime Act had already begun. These inquiries aim to determine the full extent of the defendant's unlawful gains and recover any assets traceable to criminal activity. Among the assets under review was a modified BMW vehicle registered to Harvey, an apartment in Coventry, believed to have been rented with the profit, and multiple electronic devices suspected to have been used in encrypted communications. The case also highlighted the changing profile of traffickers. Neither Farmer nor Harvey fit the types of image of violent gang members or international cartel figures. They were middle-aged, relatively low-profile individuals operating in the Midlands, not directly affiliated with known crime syndicates, at least on the surface. The legal docs on this was absolutely fascinating, how the case was built and the evidence used. I tried to bring in the time, as the script ended up being 40 minutes for the trial alone, as I do get a bit carried away with this part. In my opinion, it's always the best. Using aircraft to drop contraband is not a new thing. It's been used for decades. In the end, Farmer and Harvey learned the hard way that if you're going to import £4 million worth of coke using light aircraft, it's probably a good idea not to bring your personal mobile, drive your own car, and forget that CCTV exists. Their not so high-flying plan crash-landed into a courtroom. If crime is an art, as you see described by Ripley, theirs was finger painting, and now they've got over a decade to reflect on their masterpiece from the comfort, not so luxurious, accommodations.
Coming to you.
Driver, step out! Look at me! Step out of the car! Look at me! Hands up! Walk towards me! Walk towards me! Stop! Down on your knees! On your stomach! Hands out in front of you now! Hands out in front of you! Do not move!
Stay there!
Stay there! Stay down! Face
Stay
down!
down!
Do not look at them! Face down!
That's the cabin clear.
Do not look at them!
Cuff him up.
Hands to the small of your back!
Small of your back. Small of your back.